Hello and welcome to VeeamON 2025. But wait, it's over. That's right. We now have all of the super sessions, all of the general sessions, as well as all of the online content on the virtual experience. But guess what? It's only going to be available for a limited time. So what I have in this session, really fun cut here of my personal, completely unapproved by anybody else, top 10 that you must see before it's gone from the VeeamON virtual experience. So I'm Rick Vanover. I have a very special privilege of being involved with the content team. So I help some of the breakouts, I help shape some of the general sessions and some of the additional experiences. I've boiled it all down to this session so you can check it out. Let's start from the bottom and work our way to the top. All right, number 10. I recommend you check out the session that Landra and myself did introducing the Veeam Data Platform version 13. We walked through a number of different things, and one of my favorites was the role-based access control. Let's take a look at how that's described in our virtual session.
Going to be a granular role-based access. Security isn't just about protecting data, right? It's also about controlling who can do what. So with the new or granular role-based access control, now it gives users the ability to delegate. What users will have the ability to create a backup? What users will be able to restore? Maybe you don't want to have the backup admin being able to restore certain critical data. So you now have that flexibility. But also, RBAC can be applied across the entire environment now. So whether that's a hypervisor, agents, file shares, or just the individual backup job, this level of control really helps align with the principle of least privileges. And we can also limit the restore scope too, meaning that users can be allowed to restore only data from specific locations, backup jobs, or even define backup sources. So it's a more flexible, secure way of delegating, with minimizing the risk itself.
All right, next up is high availability. This is something that actually really surprised me, how interested the market is. And what I really like about it is I talk to a lot of folks that are redesigning their Veeam infrastructure, and they're also concurrently really interested in the Linux implementation of Veeam and the Veeam software appliance. Don't worry, I'm going to get to that one. Let's take a look at how we described how high availability coming in version 13.
So to further enhance security and accountability, we now have or implemented 4 eyes authentication model with the high availability model. So this means whenever a critical event is generated, like a sensitive restore or a configuration change, it's going to require a second set of eyes, which is going to come from your security administrator. So they'll get notified, they'll get immediately involved, basically assuring that they have full oversight on high impact actions. Now, this deployment is also active passive configuration, really designed to operate reliably, even in high, latency as well. That makes it ideal for large or decentralized infrastructures.
All right, here we go. We're still going. This is number 8 on my list. I would be remiss if I didn't think about some of the software as a service capabilities. Microsoft 365. Did you know that Veeam is the most deployed Microsoft 365 backup solution in the world? It's true. Let's hear from Corinne, where she's talking about how consuming Microsoft 365 data protection with Veeam Data Cloud, how that is an all-inclusive offering. Let's hear from Corinne.
So there's been a huge production over the last couple of years for moving from what's called the client model, which is that on-premises software that you install and manage all of the infrastructure, the storage, and the management yourself. And what we've done is taken off some of that workload, that stress, and put those into a software as a service, backup as a service models. So we'll take care of that backend storage so you don't have to worry about, is it secure? Is it available? Is it the fastest that's going to work with my infrastructure? Then we also take care of the components that move the data, all of those processing compute powers, whether you're working on an on-premises environment or you're in a cloud environment, those types of compute add up quite quickly. Next, we make sure all of this lives within a secured infrastructure. We learned a lot from our thick client days on the on-premises side of what is the most secure networking configuration, how do we segment those management networks off, how do we make sure that you're doing encryption and immutability on that back end. And with this, we're allowed to and able to offer the service level immutability that is a step above just doing it yourself because it's got a management plane separation. And all you have to do from the user side in this scenario, as we move over to the right side of the chart here, is create some jobs, monitor those jobs, and perform restores for your end users whenever necessary. Now, this comes in a couple of different flavors. They're all going to include within the backup platform all of the applications we back up under the traditional backup scope. So we have the OneDrive, the Exchange, the SharePoint, and the Microsoft Teams. And that all fits under that flexible restore and backup model where it's going to go to a traditional type of object storage. You're going to get all of the search capabilities that you need and individual files all the way down to single item attachments to emails in that environment. Now, there are some limitations to pulling that data out and having to put that data back in through the channels on the Microsoft plane because that's a lot of data coming in and you can run into problems, which is why we now also offer the Express, which is based off the Microsoft backup storage. They have a side-by-side unit in the production environment that allows you to have sort of like a snapshot instance of all of your data. So if you do have to pull back a large chunk, whether it's for a certain kind of a task or possibly someone accidentally misconfigured something on Microsoft 365 environment that caused any kind of mass data loss that you now need to correct and bring back, you're able to do that here and bring it back in a much faster. And we're talking, instead of just like a terabyte a day, we're talking about terabytes in minutes back to the production environment.
All right. Now, if you haven't noticed, I like to kind of build themes right after each other. Number 7 on the list, and we're not going to stop until we reach number 1. Trust me, I got some cool stuff coming down. Now, number 7 on the list is just simply asking the question, why backup Entra ID? You know, it's a software as a service. It's an identity service. Many organizations are using it, but you would be shocked how many times it's attacked per day, hundreds of thousands of times. But let's hear from Corinne again on why you should back up Entra ID.
Yes, the Microsoft 365 shared responsibility model covers their software as a service offering for what they are responsible for in any type of relationship and what you are responsible as the customer in that relationship. We enter these IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS offerings in order to give up some of that control and lessen the load on our IT department and be able to scale out at a larger rate. But you do still have some responsibility, even in these software as a service models. Whenever entering a software as a service offering, Microsoft, takes care of the underlying infrastructure, the first stage recycling bins, and the application layer. But the responsibility shifts at the access server. They're responsible for making sure that access server is available, but anything that comes in through that access server that is legitimate traffic or seemingly legitimate traffic, then have the access to your environment and unfiltered control. So you're still responsible for making sure anything that's still offered and accessed through that method is within your responsibility.
All right, speaking of being attacked, one thing that's really interesting here at Veeam is a very differentiating angle that we have. Those of you following us for a number of years have known that in March of 2024, we acquired Coveware by Veeam, which really put us in a different level in this space of having the best end-to-end offering when it comes to detection, incident response, and more. Let's hear from Javier and Lindsay on why the cybersecurity program is truly a difference maker for the Veeam market.
People sometimes say, well, why would I need Coveware if I have Veeam and I have this whole secure setup? I mean, threat actors are constantly changing. They are constantly trying to get into businesses, right? So, you need something like Veeam Cybersecure to ensure that your infrastructure is all set up with best practices across large organizations. You may be acquiring an organization. There's a lot of different things that can happen, unfortunately, as you're going through. And of course, we are not, we're coming in when there is an incident, but our job is to help our clients determine which recovery options are the best for them, right? So that could be obviously backing up via their Veeam infrastructure. It might be recreating data, or it may have to be that they have to negotiate and actually get a decryptor. But that's where Coveware comes in. So with the Coveware team there, in addition to that one-on-one expert-led learning and development on the previous slide, the clients are going to receive a 15-minute response SLA to our incident response service, and that's available 24/7, 365, and it guarantees virtually immediate access to expert negotiators on our team. Javier, in a ransomware crisis, every single decision carries financial, operational, and reputational consequence, right? So retaining a firm like Coveware, having us on your side with a deep specialization in just ransomware negotiations, threat actor profiling, team execution, and recovery support is going to deliver a measurable ROI through faster decisions, lower costs, and a stronger outcomes.
All right, number 5 on the list is Veeam Vault. Now, this is something that is very important to Veeam. Really, again, surprising me how interested the market and Veeam customers and partners are for this. But I think it's really important that we double down on how the predictable pricing of this backup storage offering is. Let's hear from Sam and Jacob about just that.
One of the other things that I hear sometimes is Azure Blob also has hot tier available, or other cloud providers saying like hot cloud storage. So they perceive, because Veeam Vault is built on cool tier, that it's going to be less performant and a little bit misaligned to what I was talking about earlier about performance. Something that's important to know is Azure Blob hot tier and cool tier are built on the exact same infrastructure. So you can get the exact same speeds, whether you're restoring or writing to hot or cool storage. What's really different is the economics behind it when you're DIYing this yourself. But again, like Jacob's mentioning, we've made it incredibly predictable. So you are guaranteed the highest performance object storage with Veeam Vault, as again, it's built on Azure Blob cool tier, which is the exact same infrastructure as hot tier.
Yeah, very, very insightful addition there, Sam. Thank you for that one. And what do we have as far as the pricing model here for our Veeam Vault? So for the foundation editions, we're starting at $14 per terabyte per month, compared to that of our advanced edition coming in at $24 per terabyte per month. Both of these editions have that predictable pricing. They're always secure, meaning they're always immutable, encrypted, and logically air-gapped. And again, the predictable pricing nature means that both of these models include that API calls, retrieval, and egress cost. Why don't we get into more of the differences between the two editions as well?
Yeah, no worries, right? So the first up is around that durability, right? The 11.9s and 12.9s. Again, 11.9s is an exceptionally high level of durability. Remember, one object for every million objects lost in 1,000 years. So 11.9s, especially if you're using Vault as a secondary backup target, is going to give you an exceptionally high level of durability. But for those organizations that want to go that extra mile, get up to that 12.9s, one object every billion objects in 1,000 years, we do have that advanced edition available in order to meet those high levels of durability. The next difference comes around reads and restores. Within Foundation, we implement a fair use policy. This is a common policy that is available across all Vault-like offerings. So with Veeam Vault, we give you a 20% fair use policy. So that means that 20% of the total data that you have stored in Vault can be restored at no additional cost. So let's say you have 100 terabytes, you can restore up to 20 terabytes in any given year with no additional costs. This is twice what the competition offers, and it actually is in excess of average read-restore patterns in Veeam installations. But for those that want an unlimited number of reads restores, again, head over to the Advanced Edition, especially those organizations that are undergoing frequent testing. That's that 0 part of the 32110 rule that Jacob was talking about. Advanced Edition is going to be the option for you there because it doesn't have a ceiling in terms of how many times you can read or restore from the storage, whether that's a real world scenario or a test scenario. And then the final difference is just around how granular you can be when choosing where you want your data to live. So we, again, know that data residency, data sovereignty concerns are apparent, especially in heavily governed spaces. On Foundation Edition, you can choose the specific country that your Vault will live in, but Veeam and Microsoft will choose the very specific Azure region that it will live in. So for example, here in the United States, there's more than half a dozen different data centers available. You would choose the United States, and Veeam and Microsoft would choose the very specific region that your data would be targeted to. But if you do want that full control, that full ownership, and want to pick the very specific region, again, moving over to Advanced is going to give you that granular choice. So as Jacob mentioned, they're always built on Azure Blob. They're always predictably priced. They're always pre-secured. But those are some of the differences between the two.
All right, let's hope that kind of built your interest around Veeam Data Cloud Vault. But I think it's also really important that we show how you migrate and how you use it and communicate with Vault, with your Veeam deployment. So let's hear from Michael Cade and Ben Young on how that looks from a communication perspective when you start consuming Vault with Veeam Data Platform. Let's check that one out.
So how it's added. If you've ever added object storage before, typically you'd go to your provider, they'd give you some access keys and access secrets. You'd add those credentials to your Veeam platform. Then you'd go through and go through the kind of object storage wizard, which obviously has a few of those hyperscalers front and center, and or the kind of other S3 compatible wizard. Vault's a little bit different. It's kind of secured end to end. So there's actually a wizard now within Veeam Data Platform 12 where you'll actually spin up and go, I need to add Vault. That's another repository type. And what actually happens is this is where we start actually communicating with my.veeam.com. This knows what subscription you have. And this is where you'll actually manage your storage vaults. So when you do this, it actually creates an Entra ID application. This forms the first part of kind of the authentication between your environment and us. It adds an application registration in the background as well. And then most importantly, when that's kind of all done, those first few steps, then the VBR server itself actually creates a certificate and it sends it back to us, and that's what we assign through to the storage account, and that's what we then leverage for authentication going forward. So no more access keys, no more copying and pasting things, storing those in a vault. All the authentication is done through here, and it's also managed, and you can see exactly what VBR instances are connected to your my.veeam.com through the Veeam Data Cloud portal. So all of those will be coming through to One UI. At the moment, it's a slightly separate portal, but over the next kind of quarter-ish, you'll see all of those workloads then be presented through One UI. So if you are leveraging other Veeam Data Cloud products and services, you'll see your vaults alongside your M365s and Entras and whatever else you have there.
The two things to mention here, that Entra ID logo there, that's the Veeam Data Cloud Entra ID. So it's not your Entra ID. So it gives you that capability. Also, from a shared technology, you've probably heard that mentioned a few times over the last couple of days. If you've ever used Veeam Backup for Azure or Azure Blob storage, you've already gone through a similar workflow in terms of an enterprise application, but that application ID or enterprise application would be in your Entra ID at that point. So a very shared technology. The wizard-driven approach looks exactly the same, and we're actually we'll show some screenshots to show what it looks like in VBR as well.
Absolutely. And then today you've got your Vault. I missed one slide. So as I mentioned before, when you buy Vault, you buy a subscription. You don't actually buy like an individual Vault. You buy a subscription, which is your right to consume up to, so much storage. And of course, there's the ability to kind of burst past that. And we've got, systems in place to kind of do true ups in different quarters and things, which we're not going to get into because we don't want to talk about billing. However, you then create Vaults. And you can kind of configure things the way that you would like. If you would like environment 3 to be connected, for example, to its own Vault and nothing else is written in there, absolutely fine. If you want environment 2 to be writing to its own Vault as well as connected to Vault number 1, perfectly fine. And then as storage Vault 1 at the top there, there's a storage Vault that is your single Vault, and then you've got folders in there which separate out your environments, also perfectly fine. So the flexibility's there. A bit of a side tangent. Service providers are also looking at how they can leverage this as well. And we run through the same slides here around how do they architect it, how are they going to have the subscription, and where are they going to put the data. So yeah, you can leverage Vault in any way you like. One Vault's fine, many's also fine.
So Ben, them storage vaults, can they be in different regions?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
when you create a Vault, you can select your region.
And each one of those storage vaults can be LRS or ZRS, or does that depend on what the
Subscription is tied to the quantity. That's right.
I've learned something.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, number 3, we're getting there. You're hanging in there. You should get a little gold star for being with me this long. This is fun. All right, number 3 on the list is going from one of the super sessions. Now, I only picked out a few of the super sessions here for the top 10 list. There are several, but you got to go on that VeeamON virtual experience to consume those. This particular one is from the deeper dive session that I did along with Kirsten and Emily and Pavel from the R&D team. But this is just a quick look at some of the new user interfaces, as well as giving some VeeamON love on some of the new capabilities coming there. Let's hear from Kirsten on that.
So then if I switch over to the report data, I can actually see that this is already kind of reorganized a little bit differently with the grouping, the immutable, the mutable, and also taking a look at the different workloads and their restore points. So I can actually, filter based on group or section, or anything like that. And then if we keep going a little bit further, I can drill down into the immutable group, and I can see all the workloads that I have immutability set up for and the restore points there. So some really cool stuff with the reporting engine, and I'm definitely going to have to do a video or something, a demo for YouTube to show you just how you can work it, which will be really exciting as well. So this is the new web client design. So it's a more modern, intuitive design. There's going to be 2 new dashboards that are included, the alarms overview dashboard and a dedicated intelligent diagnostics dashboard. So if you're unfamiliar with intelligent diagnostics, it's just a way that VeeamON finds common misconfiguration errors and can, identify them to you, so you can go ahead and fix them. And this could be anything from, upgrading to the latest version, or even installing a security patch. And then the alarms overview dashboard is shown here as well, so you can get an overview of your alarm status, what workloads are experiencing these alarms, and top issues by day. And you can see there's also integrated here on the side the platform health anomalies dashboard or widget as well. And then lastly, expanded analytics in the Veeam data platform. So this is some really cool stuff, because if you're running, Veeam Data Platform Advanced or even Veeam Data Platform Premium, right? Once you add VBR to your VeeamON server, you will get access to all these capabilities within Veeam Backup and Replication itself. So you're going to be able to view and generate reports right through Veeam Backup and Replication. So in this view, you can see how they have those images partnered with the reports. So that's kind of the same view that will be in the web client as well. So you can kind of see what the report's going to look like and get an idea of the outcome when you run that report. So you'll be able to run these reports right through Veeam Backup and Replication. And then you're going to be able to also analyze some charts and performance through the different interactive views. So getting access to more dashboards, more data, and more capabilities through B&R, so you don't necessarily have to open up different windows. So this is really going to help just increase, and make sure you meet compliance requirements, increase observability, and help remediate issues in real time.
All right, number 2, we're going to finish on the keynotes. Now, there's a lot to pick, and I only had so much time. I only had 10 things to pick, and I had so many choices, so many. But for number 2 on the top 10 list of what you cannot miss at VeeamON, I want to hear from probably one of the most unique perspectives that Veeam brings to the market. And that Coveware by Veeam acquisition that we did last year, truly it is one of the most amazing things we've done. It's worked back into Veeam Data Platform products. It's helped build the cybersecure program, which was previous on the list. But I love hearing Bill Siegel and Anand here talk about how that works in the market. Gives you a really good sense of where we're going. Let's hear from Anand, our CEO, and Bill Siegel, CEO of Coveware by Veeam.
So with Coveware by Veeam, one of the things we have done over the last year is build the only incident response service in our category for that exact reason. We now have the largest commercial threat intel database, giving us early warning, fast detection, and faster response. Veeam offers the only end-to-end ransomware protection in our industry, which helps our customers before, during, and after an attack, powered by innovations which we will talk about today, like IOC, indicators of control, or recon. So when disaster strikes, no one sees more than Coveware by Veeam. Bill Siegel, who leads Coveware by Veeam, and his team are on the front lines every day in real time. They don't just watch the breaches, they actually jump in and stop the bleeding. So please join me in welcoming Bill Siegel, the leader of Coveware by Veeam, to really go into the details and share what's happening out there. Bill, come on up, please. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you.
So you guys are in the middle of it every day. And some of the conversations we have, I just have to take a moment. Probably the first question to warm us up, Bill, which is, what are the patterns which no one sees until it is too late? What's the most common blind spot for every company who gets in trouble? How do they, what can you tell them about it?
Sure, Anand. I think one of the most common blind spots, and it's not the most obvious thing, is just becoming complacent. I call this the tigers in the lobby syndrome. And I love metaphors, so here goes. Imagine you're in charge of securing this hotel and making sure that these ferocious tigers that live around here don't get into the lobby and eat a customer, because obviously that'd be terrible for business. And you set up your systems, your security, your redundancy, and you're doing a spectacular job. Years go by, no tiger attacks in the lobby. The management of the hotel's like, why are we paying money to guard against these tiger attacks? We haven't had them in years. Let's just cut the budget and get out of it, right? That is very much the situation that a lot of folks in the audience are in. When you do a great job and you're using Veeam products and using great security products, business continuity reigns. But if you become complacent and you stop using these products and you think these aren't risks, you can become impacted. These are high severity, low frequency events, which are very hard to manage through when you don't have them regularly. So complacency is really one of the biggest risks I see.
Well, that totally makes sense. And knowing Bill, there must have been a tiger attack somewhere because he doesn't speak in platitudes. So what are the attackers doing today, Bill, which they were not doing 12 months back? How has it evolved?
Yeah, so the threat actors are getting really good at using almost entirely commonly used applications, meaning they're using Teams, they're using TeamViewer, they're using common Windows administrator functions. They're not using any malware often until the very end of the attack. And sometimes in data exfiltration attacks, they're not even using any malware at all. So when you think about your common security, your antivirus and things that's screening for all these signatures and everything, it's not going to work because there will be no malware used across the entire kill chain to carry out an impactful attack. And so you have to have a lot of redundancy. You have to have behavioral characteristic scanning to look for these things, these anomalies, for how these threat actors are using tools that we all use every single day inside of our environment. But when an actor gets in, they're going to use them maliciously.
So you've been in the middle of many of these, hundreds of these. What is it that separates the companies that actually succeed, recover, do this well, versus companies who don't?
Yeah, it's culture, and this will sound sort of vague, but going back to Anand's first question, the companies that recognize that this is a risk, and the only way to defend against that risk is to persistently invest in it, those are the companies that survive. When you persistently invest in it, you end up with a culture of security. You're investing in your people and security awareness training. You're investing in attracting and retaining the best staff. You're invested in using the best tools, software, and hardware, and never letting that investment up, even in the absence of impactful attacks. And that is a cultural thing inside an organization. It's not one characteristic, it's not one tool, it's not one person. It's a culture that spans the entire organization. Arguably one of the hardest things to do, because now no one person, except for the chief executive, can actually control culture.
Well said, Bill. Sometimes its culture is seen as soft, but actually it's pretty cool core to how this is done. Now, AI has become a big deal. It's sort of democratized and lowered the barriers of entry, right, for the bad actors. How are you seeing AI being deployed in these attacks? How has it evolved?
Well, it's not in the ways that a lot of the marketing, the security product marketing likes to tell you and scare you about. It's in very tactful ways. So we think about common vulnerabilities in common software that we use. Historically, you've seen threat actors specialize in specific types of hardware and software that are very commonly used, and when a new CVE comes out, that specific actor who is trained on that software is going to scramble to figure out and build an exploit. And that takes time. It's literally a coder sitting at a computer trying to figure out, how do I exploit this new vulnerability? How do I mass scan every computer on the internet to find out who's unpatched? And how do I take advantage of it? Now, so you think of that job, a person sitting at a computer coding up an exploit. Now they have AI, and they can code way faster. So that is literally a race between who can patch faster and can the bad guy code their exploit faster to see who is going to get impacted and who is not going to get impacted.
The other thing is AI can also be used for better defense, for getting prepared better. How do the best companies use AI to get to a better secure posture?
Yeah, so that's really going to be on the behavioral side, right? Picking up anomalous behavior. Why is Anand up at 3 a.m. creating new administrative accounts? That's strange behavior for Anand. He doesn't typically do that, right? The behavioral characteristics, as we talked about in the second question, are getting more and more similar to normal behavior that IT administrators and regular rank and file employees do. So picking up on these very slight anomalies in how they're actually behaving can be so subtle that a single person really can't do it on their own. But with the benefit of AI that's built into a lot of these products, you can pick up on these micro anomalies that fall a half a standard deviation outside of normal and say, maybe we should go investigate that.
Oh, that is pretty cool. Now, the geek in me always would love to know this, which is, what is the most commonly encountered strain of ransomware you see these days?
Honestly, the threat actors move around so frequently, the brands don't even really matter. And one of the things that we have seen over the past year is the actors themselves, there is no loyalty whatsoever. So this is very hard to communicate because, again, security product marketing loves to say, new ransomware strain doing this ransomware strain doing that. To us inside the space, it is the same people that have just decided to drive a blue car to work instead of a red car to work. It is not that there is a new group, it is not that there are new people out there doing this. These are career cyber criminals that have just decided to rebrand. So the actual variants, while they have their slight characteristically differences, we know that the underlying people behind them are more or less the same.
Which is cool. And what I'm excited about, Bill, is you have an incredibly large real-time database of all these new threat patterns and how they're changing. And now you productize that threat intel and be surface it via the Veeam Data Platform Premium Edition. So that is amazing, because now people have access to the threat you see every day on a real-time basis, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important things that we're developing, and one of the most important things that I'm excited about was, 2 years ago, we had built software inside of Coveware when we were this teeny little independent company, and we were rolling in all this intelligence that we're picking up from all the attacks. But we were teeny. We did not have a big reach to actually productize this and roll it out to a broad spectrum of customers. Now we have taken a Recon Scanner, we're making it generally available to VDP clients. This is really important for us because what's always been important to us is protecting the backbone of economies, right? Which are what? Small and medium-sized businesses. These are businesses that can't afford the most premium tier of EDR, right? Not everybody has the budget for all of these fancy things. But with our software, we can detect a lot of the things that these more expensive products are going to find, and we can do it very scalable. We've had some success recently with 12, 15-point endpoint customers that are using this software. They can't afford an EDR. They can't even afford the most the highest tier of AV, and we've been able to detect pre-ransomware activity that absolutely would have resulted in either an encryption attack or a data exfiltration attack on an organization early. We've alerted them to this. They've been able to patch and remediate to prevent an actual impactful incident. So I'm so excited about rolling this out more broadly because of the impact that it can have.
All right, here we are. Number one, you know it. It is the Veeam software appliance. By far, this was the fan favorite of VeeamON 2025. Now, I want to recommend that you check out the deeper dive super session. That's the one I stole a little bit of Kirsten's stuff from. But in that session, myself and Emily did a little bit more additional demos there. So it's kind of 11, but it's really just top 10. But anyways, you definitely want to watch that whole segment. So let's hear from Emily on how the Veeam software appliance looks and feels and keeps your environment secure.
Go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the other items that we're going to see in the Veeam software appliance available within version 13. Now, Anton mentioned earlier there was key 3 themes yesterday. We had security, availability, and access. First, we got to start with the security piece. So as you can see, the Veeam software appliance not only fully delivered off of Linux, but on top of that, we're going to have some DSysTig requirements right off the bat. So this is going to be secure by default, as well as making it very easy, very streamlined to be able to deploy this in multiple environments, especially if you're a relatively large infrastructure. Now, this does introduce a new piece where we start looking at taking an abstraction layer of how we handle the actual data set itself. So for example, I have this configured on a virtual machine. This is going to be where my administrator can come in and actually start setting up some very basic infrastructure items, talking about our networking, setting up our host name, et cetera. And once that's done, they can go ahead and they can log into the Veeam Host Management Console. So again, this is going to be somewhere where all of those administrators can actually come in and set up very specific settings or change anything within the configuration specifically around handling some pieces within the appliance itself. On top of that, we also have the opportunity here to add in some users and roles. So Anton mentioned earlier, we introduced this new security officer role, which I'm particularly excited about, specifically because they can help handle sensitive tasks. So let's say, for example, if I'm a brand new, this is a brand new Veeam software appliance, so we want to go ahead and set up maybe a secondary security officer role. I could go ahead and do that here. I can add in that new role as a security officer. MFA is going to be enabled by default. But guess what? Just because I hit finish doesn't mean that that role automatically gets created. Instead, this is going to default back to that original security officer to go through the process and actually approve that new role being created. So you have that additional 4 eyes authorization process that's going to happen to ensure that we don't have any misconfigurations or malicious intent that could possibly go wrong when we're configuring this part of our appliance. Now, also inside of here, we have our opportunity to actually turn on high availability like you saw earlier. So this is the step where we can configure this and then go into our Veeam environment itself and simply right click, and then we can go through the process of actually creating the cluster. Now, the one nice thing about high availability is that this feature itself is very useful, especially for any business, regardless on how large or how small your organization is. Essentially, you're just going to plug in our cluster endpoint, go ahead and assign our 2 nodes, and then we can configure those 2 inside of a cluster for high availability to take place. Now, I have some time limits here that I have to adhere to, so we're going to move on to some of the other new features and functionality that we discussed. So one of the other pieces was around access. Now, Veeam has had the opportunity to create these different types of roles. So we have the Veeam backup admin, security admin, operators, and restore roles. But we also added in the capability to create some custom roles. So when we come inside of our custom roles, I could go ahead and limit this specifically to a backup operator or even a restore operator, or we could look at both. Let's say, for example, we want to just look at the restore operator role. I can actually define inside of here what specific restore capabilities I want this operator to be able to perform. Now, one of my favorite pieces about Veeam is the fact that we have so many different ways that we can recover data from a backup. So being able to really limit this based off of who that application owner is or who that person is that's going to be performing these restores is really nice to be able to do here. And then on top of that, we could also enable some governance pieces around the infrastructure where we want to have this be restored to from the same source to selected targets. And if we actually like that custom role, I can clone it and I can make some additional changes to that role here. And since we're on this tab, might as well show the identity provider, which has been added in. So being able to support SAML authentication, whether that's with Entra ID, with Okta, this is going to be a very easy way for enterprise organizations to bring in their own identity provider already available within Veeam. Now, I feel like we have to show the web UI, otherwise, I mean, Anton set it up perfectly yesterday, so why not? So here we are with the new web UI that we have available within version 13. So we have a high-level overview that you could see your resiliency score that usually comes from Veeam Threat Center. We can see a high-level overview of your infrastructure health, how is our current backup jobs running, those statistics, protected workloads, top repositories, a lot of really great information at your fingertips. But the only other piece in here that is definitely worth mentioning is how are we going to handle updates, specifically when it comes to security. So one of the nice things about the new Veeam software appliance and this being delivered on Linux is we have this new capability to deliver the updates based off of your different system settings or what your company actually would want to allow. So essentially in here, I could come in and I could actually select a maintenance window. Let's say, for example, we do patches on a weekly basis, and that happens on very specific days. We're going to go ahead and clear all of these. Let's say that happens every Tuesday at a certain time. And I can actually select what type of patches we want to have be ran here. So this could include only security updates, which will be 100% mandatory, as well as I can include optional updates. Let's say we have a new release that includes new features, functionality. We could have that be enabled as well. You'll see a full list of what's included inside of these updates, but as well as a deadline for when these updates are going to push forward to continue to make sure that your Veeam software appliance is always going to be secure and up to date. Rick, what did you think? That was a lot we had to show.
Yes, you did. You did fantastic,
appliance.
everyone. Give it up for Emily. All right, that is fantastic. Now, VeeamON is over, but you know what? There's still so much more that you can consume. I highly recommend that you go, first of all, to Veeam.com. There's more information about that Veeam experience there. We've got trials. Did you know that Veeam Data Platform can be trialed super easily. Just go on over to veeam.com and check that out. Now, Veeam Data Cloud, this is also a very important part of our business. There's clickable demos on the website, so you can very easily take a look at the experience and get a sense of how it goes, and then reach out to your Veeam team. Now, that super session content is available now, but it's not going to be available forever. So if you're into binge watching for Veeam stuff, now is the time. Here's the place. Check it out. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my beloved Veeam community. If you don't know about community.veeam.com, that is an absolute differentiator for Veeam. And lastly, check out the hands-on labs at the QR code and the short URL there as well. On behalf of the whole Veeam team, thank you for participating in VeeamON 2025. Again, this content's not going to be live forever. Now's the time to watch it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.